Hello, Hornets. It's good to be with you again and back for another semester here at Emporia State. I'll be sharing some thoughts with you today, as will Dr. Cordell, Dr. William, and Dr. Allen. We know that you're interested in updates about some things that are going on here at Emporia State. You know, 2 weeks ago, Chip and I became grandparents. And Charlotte was born into a world that was very different than the one that I was born into 50 some odd years ago. Today, across this country, girls and young women and many other people see possibilities that they could not envision just a few years ago. So, regardless of your political persuasion, I hope that you see more possibilities for more people today than you did even a few days ago. Today, I'm a fan of someone whose name I did not even know before yesterday. And I hope that if you've not watched the video of Amanda Gorman reading her poem at yesterday's inauguration, that you take a moment to do so. A couple of things that were in the poem that this very young woman shared with a wisdom far beyond her years include: somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. And I certainly think that's true of our nation, and I feel that that's true personally of me as well. Another quote from the poem that she shared is, "And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must put our differences aside." Well, like most of you, I am really glad to be looking at 2020 in the rearview mirror. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you in the coming months as we kick this pandemic to the curb and work together on the many important tasks ahead of us. I'm glad to be entering 2021, but also recognize that 2021 won't be without some challenges. But before we talk about those challenges, I want to pause for just a moment and say thank you for the many ways that all of you faced the challenges of 2020. You supported each other and you supported our students with kindness and grace, all kinds of grit, and I am deeply appreciative. I know our students are, and I know each of us appreciate our colleagues as well. As a result of your relentless commitment and dedication to changing lives for the common good, let me just go through a few quick highlights. We finished the renovation of Abigail Morse Hall. The Prophet Aquatic Outreach Center is almost done. The new Veterans Center is taking shape and will be done before too long. We have some new and exciting academic programs. In fact, just yesterday morning at 6 a.m., I was in Topeka to be on KSNT's morning program to talk about our new Masters of Science in Nursing. For the third year in a row, we had the highest retention rate in Emporia State history. Last fall, we had the highest retention rate ever for students of color at Emporia State. This was the third year in a row of an all-time high number of graduate students, the second year in a row, all-time high number of graduates, and all-time high graduation rate. You are all doing amazing things here at Emporia State, and I'm deeply appreciative. I know our students are as well. These are the direct result of the great work that all of you do. You know, I believe firmly that every single student at Emporia State comes to us with tremendous potential, and we are in a position to help each student uncover their potential and discover ideas and possibilities that they never even knew existed. No one helps students achieve their goals better than we do here at ESU. That's what makes ESU so special. You know, I've heard countless examples of the ways in which our faculty and staff have selflessly contributed their talents not only to the Emporia community, but also to our students. Around 40% of ESU students are first-generation college students. And for these students especially, I like to take a very long view of what their time here at Emporia State does. We offer more than a college degree. We enable multi-generational change for these students and for their families. And the way that our departments all prioritize high impact learning is incredible. It sets the course for so many of our students. Not many people can say that their jobs are the kinds of jobs that change the world, but we can. That's why we are here. And so thank you to each and every one of you. The commitment that we all make to assure that education remains accessible does not come easy. Like every other institution in the state of Kansas and frankly in the country, we're dealing with financial impacts that have been brought on by the pandemic. Our current fiscal year finances are stable right now due to COVID-19 funding that we've received and thanks to the hard work that we all did to reduce our expenditures and create savings going into this year. However, and you knew a but was coming, I'm sure, as we head into fiscal 2022, there are some serious budget challenges for us to overcome. Hopefully you can see a quick slide and it just looks at enrollment in the system. And I want to point something out. If you look at our students, and if you're counting by noses or if you're counting by full-time equivalent, whether you're looking at them as a number or a percentage, we had the best enrollment in the system. But having said that, our enrollment was down some this year, and that has a financial impact. It creates a revenue shortfall for us in tuition, in room and board revenue, and in several other categories of revenue. And there have been some other shortfalls that result from the pandemic. But I want to turn our attention to a couple of other quick things. So we can be proud of our enrollment. We've done well. We'll turn the corner on this. But every year, our costs go up, just as they would with any university or any business. And that's something that we deal with year in and year out. The other thing that is true and deeply disappointing for this year is that the budget that the governor just issued about a week ago has huge cuts for higher education. Let me share just a little bit and also take a moment to note that the way that higher education impact is covered in the governor's budget is a little bit confusing because essentially prior years have been restated. For Emporia State, as we transition from fiscal 2021 to 2022, the state is cutting our allocation by more than 1.8 million. That's huge for us. That's more than 5% of our state allocation. We're not alone. Higher ed across the state was cut by more than 40 million. All of the universities coming in at somewhere north of 5%. K through 12, on the other hand, has received more than 240 million in additional state funding. And that's difficult, I think, when we're being cut to look at another branch of education that is receiving additional funding. As we move forward, we have some financial challenges that we have to overcome. We are not alone in doing that, but I do believe we're in a better position than some sister institutions. And we've already begun the hard work of looking at our fiscal 22 and beyond budgets. We will do this as we have in times past in a very collaborative manner where we try to bring lots of different voices to the table and lots of different ideas to the table. You can expect to hear more about this, some more details in the next few weeks. You know, in the time I've been here at Emporia State, one thing I've seen is that we always pull together. We work together with a great spirit of collaboration to address hard things. And that's what we're going to be doing here in the next few months. It's going to take all of us working together. A few things that we all can do in the meantime is continue to do everything we can to support, advise, retain, attract new students, enroll them, reach out and connect with our current students, check in on them. You know, COVID has been difficult for so many people, and it's certainly been true for our students. It's been difficult for everyone. Take active steps within your departments to recruit new students. Talk with or write to people in the legislature or the business community about the value of higher education. We know that higher education is crucial to our state's economic future. We produce the workforce of the future, the entrepreneurs of the future. And without higher education, our ability to do that is hampered. We've got a lot of hard work ahead of us. We've got challenges to overcome. But one thing I've learned about Emporia State people is that we are up to, I believe, any task ahead of us. I want to say thank you to all of you for everything that you've done during the fall semester. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cordell for an academic update.
Thank you, President. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to, well, spring 2021. You know, we are starting spring semester with as much face-to-face instruction as we can provide, given that, as always, our first priority has to be to keep each other as safe as we possibly can. Something really good, as best we can tell, last fall, the classroom at ESU was a pretty safe place, and that is great. But even though I'm sure we're all impatient to get to a time where we no longer have to wear masks and keep our distance and wipe down surfaces, we're not there yet. This is just not the time to let our guards down. So I would encourage all of you and all of us, let's hang in there with those classroom safety protocols and know that it won't be forever that we have to do these things. There is one other subject that I want to touch base with you on today. I've gotten a number of questions from faculty and some staff members too over the last day or two about some reports in the media about a process at KBOR that is called Strategic Program Alignment Reviews. Now, for those of you who may not have seen this or may not be aware of what's going on, this is a process in which KBOR is looking at all of the undergraduate academic programs at the 6 universities that are considered to be low enrolled programs. And they define that as a program that averages enrolling fewer than 25 juniors and seniors in that major over the past 5 years. Now, the purpose of these special reviews that are being done is to determine whether or not we should continue to offer those small programs. So obviously, this is a serious thing, and we have to take it very seriously. ESU has 13 programs on that list. We don't have to present our findings and our recommendations until February. We're one of the last universities that will do so. So we're still working on our responses and refining them. But I will tell you this much. One of the things we're going to be emphasizing is that small programs are not necessarily unproductive or inefficient just because they're small. For example, we have programs on that list that teach mostly general education courses. Well, a program like that's going to be pretty efficient. We've got programs on the list that are multidisciplinary. In other words, most or all of the courses required for the major are actually courses that are already being offered by other programs. So you see, in that situation, the program in question might have very little or even no instructional costs of its own. Another situation, we've got a couple of programs on that list that aren't really freestanding majors at all. They're just frameworks that provide an opportunity for a student to earn a second licensure, a second teaching licensure in a different field. So there's a lot of factors there that have to be considered other than just one number representing the number of majors who are enrolled in the program. Now, there is no question that most of the 13 programs on our list actually offer very good value at very low cost, and I'm convinced that we can make a good case for retaining most of them. There is no question, as President Garrett mentioned, looking ahead, we're going to have to find some efficiencies in our academic programs. There's no question about that going forward. But the main thing I want to tell you about these special reviews is don't assume that just because a program is on that particular list, it's going to have to disappear, because I don't believe that to be the case. I will keep you posted about this as we go forward.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think I'm next. I just didn't get an introduction, but you all know me by now. My name is Jim Williams, Vice President for Student Affairs. First, I want to say I'm going to have a lot of information here that will be a resource for you to work with your students on if you get questions or such. Don't worry about taking notes and such. Thanks to the assistance of marketing and media, an email probably as we're talking is going out with this information so that you can have it as a resource and pass it on to fellow colleagues and things. But there's a number of categories that we wanted to touch upon to assist the students as they return here shortly, and seem to be the themes that students are asking about that you may get questions about too in the great supportive role you all have with students. So the first one is financial aid. There have been a number of changes in many of our students' lives and their parents' livelihoods and challenges and et cetera, financial wise. And so we want to encourage communication with students that if you are hearing that they are having financial concerns, please have them reach out to the financial aid office. And there's a couple of ways they can do that. They can send an email to financial or finaid@emporia.edu. They can schedule appointments. The big thing that we want to make sure is that we're working with the students to review what their financial information is so that they can make sure we're maximizing the aid and the eligibility they may have for additional fundings or loans or even grant eligibility that may have changed based on particularly what they call the earned income from the family's commitment to that student. There is also going to be, we've been notified, some additional COVID relief grant funding. We're very excited about that. A group has been meeting and has put together the matrix again that we have to use in conjunction with the federal's requirements on distributing that funding. And so students need to, look at the CARES frequently asked questions page, follow Hornet announcements, look at their ESU email accounts for communication regarding this funding, and then the availability of, we're hoping, some potential funds that students can apply to in emergency situations. But the big thing is make sure that we can continue to get them into financial aid. The second area I want to touch upon is food insecurities. Our Corky's Cupboard program is located in the Memorial Union on the south end of the Center for Student Involvement. And beginning on the 25th, Monday through and Thursdays from noon to 5 p.m., the cupboard will be open for students to come in and shop for the necessities they need in relationship to helping ease those food insecurities. We've been able to really be fortunate in receiving donations and such, and so we're well ready for the students to return and to have that as a option, and that includes vegetables, produce, frozen goods, meat, and then obviously the shelf commodities that we have in there. We also are pleased that we had some success with ACES and an AT&T Learning Funding Grant. And so there are also going to be available for students some school supplies, note cards, Post-it notes, pens, pencils, paper, etc. And so again, students articulating concerns about this, please refer them to Corky's Cupboard. They can find information also on a large community scale. And this may be something that's useful for faculty, staff, and community members that you may know. Very simply, www.emporia.edu/eat. And that will provide a very comprehensive list of all of the opportunities that are available to assist in a number of the insecurities that sadly many folks are facing. Counseling and support services. Again, I want to emphasize that we are working with students and that we have both emergency availability in our counseling as well as scheduled appointments. They simply need to call the counseling center, and that number will be in the information received, but it's 341-5222. Schedule an appointment. We are hosting things through the Zoom platform for health, and so students place-bound have that opportunity to receive that counseling as well. I want to encourage faculty and staff, if there's some support and some resources you might feel you're needing, please reach out to Human Resources, and they will do a very good job of connecting you with a number of support opportunities that are available to us as employees. The other component is each semester students get 5 free sessions. Those sessions restart each semester. So they start new in August, they start new in January, and they start new at the start of the summer session. After those 5 sessions, there is a minimal $5 per session charge for students to continue in more of a long-term relationship with counseling. But again, that should not be a prohibitive barrier to students who do need that support. They will work with the student and make professional judgment on that aspect. Finally, something to be thinking about. Our students look to us for our, quote, wisdom and things that we know and things that we've gone through. This is the first time for many of us that we're going through a number of things at the same pace and at the same novelty level as the students. Unless we have some really dedicated folks, no one was here in 1918 for the last pandemic. I do not believe any of us were around with the level of things that were displayed January 6th at the Capitol. And so we too have a lot of questions. And I think the encouragement is we don't have to have all the answers. But as we look at the things that are going on, knowing where those resources are that can support all of us. To that extent, student wellness is geared up again. Boy, we're hoping we don't have a semester like we had last semester with the old Rona being around us. But again, we are offering services to faculty and staff. If you are symptomatic, you just simply need to call 5222 and you can set up an appointment with the folks in the counseling service, in the health service. Also, they are and do have the capability to do rapid testing for COVID, for influenza, and for strep. And so if any of those symptoms are presenting too, that is an option that you have here on campus. And then again, you can decide whether you want to work with our healthcare practitioners in the health center, or if you want to have the information faxed to your primary care physicians. Diversity Student Programs has a number of really wonderful opportunities to continue conversation and education across the campus. I also want to remind everybody that they are a phenomenal resource for those underrepresented students seeking an ear and seeking someone that can help them navigate through the system. And so please encourage students that if they've got questions or concerns to reach out to Teresa in Diversity Student Programming. Teresa and the Student Counseling Center have partnered on a number of initiatives again this semester that will provide opportunities for students to process and work through, including some racial healing spaces and some student grief support groups. And so again, there's some resources there for students. Going along with that, the Center for Student Involvement is again willing to come out to classrooms or virtually, obviously, and do presentations for students that you may see that need engagement opportunities, looking to create some togetherness. We have set a form up in Hornet Life that all of our student organizations have access to. They can fill that form out, and essentially what it is we will begin reviewing if the conditions are right, requested programming that would be face-to-face, with the idea that that would start somewhere after April 1st, again, pending the conditions of the virus and the things that we are managing as a campus. So that information will be available too. Spring testing, we will continue to do our testing program. Probably one change is each time we offer a testing block across the campus, it will be for faculty, staff, and students. And we will just lump the entire campus population into that. And so if you see a testing program coming up, we're trying to get information out about a week and a half to 1 week prior to that so that we can get folks signed up through bookings. Faculty and staff are welcome to participate in that testing as well. Our final testing for our arriving back to campus today and tomorrow, they're in the residence halls testing the residence hall student population. And then the 25th and 26th from 1 to 4 next week is the wrap up for the general population that is left in that testing. Finally, probably the biggest hot and heavy topic that we all have questions on is the vaccinations and how vaccinations are going to work. Couple of things that we're learning. There have been a number of voices, including our campus's voice, advocating for our faculty and staff to be considered in some of the earlier phases of the testing protocols that have been outlined by the governor's office. That process is still in place. And I know yesterday, sitting in the Board of Regents meeting, other campuses were also having that conversation with the Kansas Department of Health and the governor's office. And so I do not have anything definitive that says that there's going to be some changes, but I do want to reassure everybody that we are absolutely advocating for some changes and some earlier opportunities for our faculty and staff in their role as educators. Right now, it still is a 5-phase process. We understood late yesterday that Lyon County had started to move to phase 2, which I believe is 65 and older. And I know that the few vaccinations that they had coming, the signups were filled almost immediately. And so there's still from what we understand, a supply chain issue with the vaccinations getting out and about across the state. But I know both the hospital and the county are working on that to make sure that we are trying to get that vaccination here. We are looking at being able to provide support for the vaccination program at phase 5, which is pretty much the general public. And we have years of practice doing flu vaccination clinics, and we're geared up to do the COVID vaccination, pending approval by the CDC, by the state, making sure we have the equipment to keep the vaccination safe. We've got the folks that are chomping at the bit to do it. So the man and women power aspect is not the issue. It again is the supply chain and vaccinations. We're hoping that we will have more to announce on that, and that probably realistically would be something that would take place on or about the latter part of March, early part of April, hoping that we would move to that phase 5. And then as in all things that we've been doing with COVID, including the vaccination, it will not be a mandatory requirement that you have the vaccination. There is a choice that you will be able to make as an individual as to whether or not you want to participate in the vaccination program or not. Remembering it has not been fully approved, it has emergency approval. I know there are folks that do have questions, and the best advice I can give you is to, research and use whatever information's out there so that you can determine if that vaccination is the best choice for you. So again, lots of information, but that will be coming to you so that you'll have it at your fingertips. Finally, thank you for all that you're doing in working with students. I had an interview yesterday with our student publication, The Bulletin. And so I always take an opportunity to ask questions back and get the feedback from students. And one of the things that the point was made was, you would think we would always say, or I would always say, make sure the students are in mind. But ESU has really made sure that the students are in mind as decisions have been made, and that, it's not been easy for anybody, but, maybe as students, we've learned a few skills, and maybe as the university, you've learned a few skills and a few things about ourselves as we've all gone through this new and interesting experiences. And so, that's a credit to everything that everybody is doing and all the efforts that people are putting in. And it is absolutely really appreciated. And we thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Very good. I'm Dr. Allen. I'm your Chief Diversity Officer. Welcome to the spring semester 2021. And much of what has been covered, really speaks to the point that President Garrett made at the very beginning. ESU has a multi-generational impact on the lives of the people that we serve. And the support that we provide is very, very important. And Dr. Williams laid out an exhaustive list of activities that you all are actively engaged in order to support a healthy experience during some very unhealthy times. And so I just want to extend my gratitude in conjunction with the executive team here. Some of the things that are happening in the diversity space are in concert with things that are going on with our strategic planning, specifically within our schools and colleges, professional development activities that may be happening out of diversity student programs and other areas across campus, and some of the work that may be going on in the community. More specifically, just to note, on March 18th, we will be hosting a virtual brown bag training, unconscious bias training, in conjunction with Pittsburgh State. So please stay tuned for that. I want to also add to a little bit of what Dr. Williams was speaking about when it comes to the basic needs of our students. The campus, under the charge of President Garrett, has coordinated a basic needs coalition, which is a university-wide committee of student affairs professionals, faculty, and community members, in order to contact the chair of that committee, which is Dr. Jasmine Linnerberry. Her email is basicneeds@emporia.edu. That particular committee works in conjunction with some of the work that is happening in student affairs and other places across campus to address insecurities. And what's really important here is that it's more than just food, and it's more resources than specifically just for students. So we have faculty, we have staff, we have partners of our institution that may have challenges as well as our students. So I'm encouraging each of you to pay attention to what's happening with your colleagues, with your peers, as well as with yourself. And if there is a need to explore resources through this particular point of contact, please, please do that. And if you know someone who may be struggling, please encourage them to use that point of contact as well. Also, in addition to what Dr. Williams was saying, the resources that, in addition to the EAT website, there's an Emporia Strong website, which includes all the community resources in Lyons County. So that's very important to keep available as a resource. And for our faculty members, as you're finalizing your syllabi, please think about ways that you can include information in your syllabi regarding meeting our students' needs in these areas of insecurity. Also, I received an email from our Director of Learning Technologies, Rob Gibson, and others may have received this email as well. There's an accessibility summer camp, which is not only taking proposals, but also will be taking students. The deadline for that is coming soon. So please email Rob Gibson if you're interested in this accessibility summer camp. The camp is a disability inclusion camp, and all interested parties are welcome. On February 2nd at 3 p.m., Diversity Student Programs will be presenting Leadership in the Midst of Chaos. And our guest speaker for that event is Adrian Peterson. This is one of our Humanity First series, which is being presented by Diversity Student Programs, and it should be very engaging. And then finally, I want to give a shout out to the Teachers College. They had an amazing guest speaker today, Dr. Maria Salazar from the University of Denver. I'm encouraging you all to request a link to see the video presentation. This particular faculty member helped stimulate thinking around evaluation, assessment, and teacher and education development in ways that I think will be provocative and informative. On that note, finally, I would just like to add that we're in a very tenuous time. I was having a conversation in a previous meeting yesterday, and Provost Portal mentioned that it's a fragile time, in fact. And because it's so fragile, it's really important that we create safe spaces and opportunities to connect with each other, to communicate, to listen, and to learn so that we can be able to navigate through this time together. And with that, I think those are my final words. Thank you, and to President Garrett.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allen. Gwen, are you going to be serving as the question reader for us?
I am. First, I want to remind everybody that you can continue to submit questions if you go to emporia.edu/live and use the submit questions button. They are coming in virtually real time. We started the town hall today with about 13 questions that had been submitted either beforehand or during the first part of our town hall. We actually are down to 5 questions because a number of those were about vaccines, which Dr. Williams covered, and several are actually on the same topic, so I've combined them. So I'm going to encourage you, if you still have questions, to go ahead and submit them, but we're going to jump into what we already have. So Dr. Williams, my first question is going to be to you because the parking department comes under your umbrella. Are there any price discounts on parking passes, specifically orange, purchased this year? As a distance education teacher, I'm now rarely on campus, so obviously not using the pass.
That is a great question. Now, the parking department's part of police and safety in the division, but Dr. Williams doesn't get to run what the parking department does. There is a campus appointed committee that is inclusive of students, faculty, and staff. And so what I can say to the person asking that question is I certainly will pass that question on to the chair of that committee, and the committee can certainly review that and make recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Cordell, I'm going to jump over to you. This is about your discussion of evaluating programs that we have under review. The question is, will faculty and staff in the programs under review be given an opportunity to respond to concerns before the decisions about these programs are made?
Yes, they will, Gwen. What has happened already is that the department chairs in whichever department houses one of those programs, the chairs have already drafted a written response, and those drafts are being refined. I'll just briefly tell you, one of the advantages of being one of the last universities to present the findings and recommendations to the board is you can see what happens with the ones who go before you. So we're refining these drafts partly based on that. But before we actually submit our written materials in early February, we'll have to attach a recommendation for each of the programs. We have to either recommend to continue it, to merge it with some other program, to discontinue it, or we can ask for time to do further review of the program. So before those recommendations are attached, and this is sent off to KBOR, the department will have further opportunity to comment on what's being submitted, and faculty involved in these programs certainly at the department level should be a part of that conversation.
All right, thank you. I have a brand new question, which is about the mask mandate. Some are claiming that they've already had COVID, so they don't need to wear a mask, and we may have the same thing with people who get vaccines. Dr. Williams, could you tackle this question? What should we do in those situations? Do they still have to wear masks, and how do we get that information out there?
There should be communication that's gone to the students and the campus, but yes, the mask mandate has not changed from last semester. It does not matter if you've had COVID, and it does not matter if you've had the vaccination. It's still a precaution that's necessary to help curb the spread of the virus. And so if I can tell you from the standpoint of students, if there's a concern with the student, please send that contact information or the student's name to my office and what the concern is, and either myself or the Dean of Students will work with the student to educate and comprehend the need for the mask. If it is a personnel issue, then as we had in our protocol last semester, it would be something that eventually would be forwarded through to that individual supervisor. The key thing in all of this is asking folks to please put on the mask, but if they are defiant, not getting into an argument, just passing it on to the next individual, and we'll take care of it.
Okay. This next question is going back, Provost Cordell, to the program review, and it's actually sort of a question for the two of us. The question is, where did the Wichita Eagle get the list of programs for ESU that are being looked at? And I know that I'm the one that gave them the list that I believe you gave me, so you'll actually know where it started.
Actually, Gwen, that information would have been pretty easily available to anyone who wanted it, because the list of all the programs under review at the 6 universities has been a part of the KBOR minutes for several months now. So would have been pretty easy to pick that up.
Okay, thank you. We have another new question. This is about the talk at the Teachers College that Dr. Allen mentioned. And the question is, if folks can get contact to access that recording, or could it be posted on the Hornet Digital site? And I am not sure we have an answer to that, but if we don't, we will find out. Dr. Allen, do you know about that?
I do know that the presentation will be available probably late tomorrow. And from there, we can place it in its appropriate medium.
Okay, so in that case, I would say watch for Hornet announcements, and we can put an announcement out there when we know that that is available. Okay, new topic, and I've actually had 3 questions on this that I'm combining into one. There have been newspaper stories recently about the Board of Regents meeting yesterday and the KBOR action on the suspensions, terminations, and dismissals policy. So President Garrett, I've got several questions here about that. The policy discusses a framework. One question is, will faculty be involved in drafting that framework? Another question refers to what you were talking about our enrollment numbers, asking if our retention is so good, are we potentially in a better place that we would not have to adopt the temporary measure that KBOR just passed?
Okay, let me try to take a quick stab at both of those. First, regarding the policy and the framework, this is a new policy to me as well, and to others here at the university who just were seeing it a little bit in advance of, or maybe even during the KBOR meeting. And so there's a lot to digest, a lot to unpack. Should Emporia State move forward under that policy, any framework that we develop, we absolutely will develop in consultation with our shared governance groups. I think that is incredibly important. Regarding the retention question, I think that's a great observation. We've had fabulous retention for the last few years. And pre-COVID, we were on track for our third straight year of an increase in our incoming freshmen. As you heard, we've had our third year in a row of a record number of graduate students. If you were listening closely, you might have heard something else in that litany of incredible records. And that is that we've also graduated the highest number of students ever in a single year in the last 2 years. And what that means is that although that is something that we should absolutely celebrate because we're doing exactly what we want to do as far as serving our students and making sure they graduate, when they are in our pipeline for a shorter period of time, we don't count those noses for as long. But for incredible graduation rates and all-time high graduation records, we would have been up in enrollment. And it's still creating a challenge for us as we look forward. Of course, we're all hopeful that we will turn the corner on enrollment as we kick COVID to the curb over these next few months. But that's something that remains a challenge. And when we have an enrollment concern in a given year, and we do this year, even though our enrollment performance was the best in the system, we were still down. That is a concern that remains with us for 4 years because those classes take a while to work through the pipeline. One other quick comment with respect to that question, and it raises something that is a broader area of exploration for us. At Emporia State, we obviously have processes and we have policies that we've been using for years now as we've addressed budget concerns. And so we're going to need to unpack this new policy in light of our existing policies. And so there's a lot of work to be done here in the next few weeks, but I'm making a commitment to you that we will absolutely include shared governance groups in that work.
All right, thank you. I'm going to jump back over to Provost Cordell. Provost Cordell came to Emporia State in 2013, and he is retiring at the end of this semester. So Provost, someone has asked, during your time at ESU, were there any initiatives or policy changes you envisioned or explored but couldn't implement? Maybe more important issues came up or there were some procedural obstacles?
No, as a matter of fact, everything I've tried to do has been 100% successful. So, nothing like, actually, that's not true at all. Well, I would say that, there are always competing priorities, and you'll always have a certain number of ideas, and only a few of them sometimes can actually be implemented. As far as procedural hurdles. I really haven't found that to be true very much here at ESU. What does happen a lot, though, is I might have an initial idea that in the end is replaced by someone else's better idea. That tends to happen quite a lot, but I've learned not to worry about that very much because it's become clear to me over time that it doesn't really matter whose idea it was. If it's a good one and if it works, there's going to be plenty of credit to go around for everybody. So it's been good.
Great. And we are wishing you all the best in your retirement and are going to enjoy the last 5 months that we have you on campus. President, I'm going to come back to you with a budget question. And the question is, as we start preparing for the fiscal year 2022 budget, will furloughs and/or personnel reductions be part of those cuts?
Well, that's a great question, and maybe asked by someone who's been around for a while, because that's certainly been something that Emporia State has gone to over the years, and frankly, any university would go to as we move through a process of budget cutting. You know, one thing that is true of a higher education budget, and it's not just Emporia State, it's pretty much universally true across all of higher ed, is that about 2/3 of our budget is in the area of personnel. Sometimes you can address budget challenges by allowing positions that are currently unfilled to remain unfilled, and sometimes additional work needs to occur, which is very sad, I think, for all of us, because we all love and appreciate our colleagues. The questioner asked about furloughs as well. That is certainly a tool in the toolbox that will be examined. And one thing I want to mention is that if we do move forward with furloughs at some point in the future, they will impact those of us at the senior levels absolutely as much as or more than others. I want people to understand that we won't be exempting ourselves from the pain, but we've got some work to do over the next several months for sure. And hopefully some of that work that we do will be work that allows us to transition not just all at once, but over the course of a couple of years into where we need to position ourselves for the future. But thank you for that question. It's an important one. I know it's one that causes people concern and stress, and Emporia State has to be looking at all of the options, and I know that our peer institutions are doing the same right now.
Thank you. And we now have one final question. President, this is also for you. Congratulations on your new granddaughter. Can you tell us your new grandma name and whether you chose it or your family bestowed it upon you?
Well, I chose my name, and it was partly based on a name that some students have affectionately called me over the years. So my new grandma name is Gigi, and I don't know whether this is clear. This is Charlotte, who, as you may notice, is doing Stingers Up. So, but let me just pause for a moment. You know, as someone who has become a grandparent and who has raised several children, you know, as we move forward into a future that has some uncertainties attached to it, one of the things that is incredibly important is that institutions like Emporia State continue to serve a broad cross-section of our state, our nation, our world's students. And we've done that so well. And I'm proud to work with all of you. And even though we've got some hard work ahead, I know that we'll approach it in a collaborative way. So thank you in advance for the hard work ahead. and for the great semester that we are all about to have. And as always, stingers up.